Brian Hayes.
President, thank you very much indeed. I'll make some brief remarks, if I may. I want to firstly agree with the very open approach that's been taken by our rapporteur on this very important file, Nina Gill, and say that that approach is something that I'm minded of. I think it is important that as we go through this file, even though we've had an amount of discussion thus far in the last mandate, colleagues will want to take an open approach and look for compromise and look for solutions to a file that's very important, and not just obviously for the industry but for the entire financial functioning of the European Union. In the last parliamentary term, President, as Nina Gill said, a lot of work has already been done on this file, and I think it was very sensible at the time that the vote was not rushed through Parliament, as there were a large number of important issues that required further clarification and further consideration. The goal of this Commission proposal is of course admirable, and the EPP very much supports the enhanced regulation of shadow banking in order to minimise system-wide risks within the general EU economy. However, I do believe that the reform of money market funds must be proportionate and should consider developments elsewhere so as to ensure that no harmful impact on the EU markets occur. And I very much agree with what the rapporteur said when she spoke about the need to strike a balanced approach to this. I think that makes sense, and to be as open as we possibly can in terms of hearing of all of the potential harmful effects that this proposal may have when it works its way through the markets. There are some important and well-worked provisions in this proposal which focus on various areas such as diversification of assets, know your investor policies, liquidity management, supervision rules and many others. However, I am concerned with the proposal to impose a 3% capital buffer on CNAV MFFs. This could have serious implications for liquidity in Europe and make the EU less attractive internationally. It is simply not economically workable for CNAV MFFs to maintain a 3% capital buffer. CNAV MFFs are extremely important to the EU-wide economy. Investors such as corporations, pension funds, local authorities and charities use CNAV funds for their day-to-day operations. Their priority is solvency, liquidity and then yield. CNAVs facilitate their needs by operating a simple business model that is investing shareholders' cash in very short-term low-risk assets. Keeping those funds in the European economy is vital for our recovery. Europe hosts some 400 billion in CNAV MFF funds, which, if a capital buffer were to be imposed, may be incentivised to re-domicile. The US SEC, as the rapporteur said, made a decision in July of this year firmly rejecting a capital buffer proposal. The SEC Commissioner Gallagher said that a capital buffer, quote, made no economic sense, unquote, and that foreign policy makers should, quote, should be loath to follow that rabbit down that particular hole, unquote. He also said that a buffer would only offer an illusion of protection to investors and the markets. Now, the idea of a hearing, rather a round table, as Nina Gill has proposed, with representatives from industry and other interested parties is an idea that I very much welcome and would encourage the committee to follow. I think it makes sense that we have as much discussion as possible on this proposal and the potential implications of this proposal. I think it would also be useful if we heard directly from the SEC itself and from their representative to explain their views and to inform us on how we reach our decision. I am well aware that there are many differences between the US and EU money market industry, yet it is important to note that in the ECB's opinion on the Commission proposal, it states that the capital buffer rule, quote, does not take into account the MFF's risk profile while facilitating its application may have undesired consequences on the investment policies of CNAV MFFs, unquote. I am glad that the Commission has repeatedly stated that the CNAV funds have an important role to play within the EU-wide economy, but the proposed capital buffer could have a very detrimental impact on the CNAV money market funds industry within the EU. Therefore, I believe, President, we need to work together to find a practical, workable solution on this issue. I look forward to working with the rapporteur, Ina Gill, and the shadow rapporteurs in the coming weeks and months at a compromise solution which allows for continuation of CNAF funds alongside VNAF funds. Thank you, President.